Next in the broadcast, the government's economy-related ministries announced they will cooperate on efforts to upgrade and reform their agencies to boost growth and foster long-term innovation. The Twitter and YouTube accounts of United States Central Command are hacked by a group claiming to be supporters of Islamic State militants. And the Paris-based magazine at the heart of the recent terror attack prepares to print up to a record 3 million copies of its latest issue as Al-Qaeda warns France of more retaliation. Primetime News begins now.
Welcome to the program. You're watching Primetime News coming to you live from Seoul. I am Kang Chae-ri.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We begin with the gathering of the nation's top economic-related ministers and agency heads who briefed the president on this year's policy directions.
And in line with President Park Geun-hye's reform drives, the group promised improvements to strengthen Korea's economic fundamentals. Our Ji-yoon has more on what's being dubbed the golden time for change.
Opening a joint briefing to the president by 6 economy-related ministries and agencies, Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan stressed the importance of overhauling the public sector as the first step in revitalizing the Korean economy, stressing that 2015 is the golden time for structural reforms and innovation. Top economic policymakers laid out plans for strengthening the nation's economic fundamentals and balancing domestic demand and exports. The government plans to focus on reforms in the 4 sectors of labor, finance, the public sector, and education this year. The government said its efforts last year set the stage for implementing the president's 3-year economic reform plan, with its agencies reducing their debt by $22 billion to surpass the initial goal by about $4 billion. Seoul will keep reducing government debt, restructure pension schemes for civil servants, and push forward with other public sector overhauls in the hope of leading reforms in other sectors. For example, the Labor Ministry will promote salaries based on their performance, not seniority. The government will also devise safety net measures for temporary workers to improve working conditions. To better cater to investors in the financial sector, the government will facilitate venture capital projects and prepare an implementation plan for the second phase of reforms. Universities, for their parts, will now be focused on providing more practical education, and designated colleges will now have to match their student quotas with market demand so that students can get hired upon graduation. Ji-yoon, Arirang News.
South Korea and the United States kicked off a 2-day joint naval drill earlier this Tuesday. This is a first since North Korea expressed its willingness to come back to the negotiating table with South Korea on the condition that Seoul and Washington call off their joint trainings. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
2 U.S. Aegis destroyers, including the 9,200-ton USS Mustin, are currently in the East Sea for a joint training with South Korea's 3,200-ton Aegis destroyer, Kwanggeto the Great. This is their first military training since North Korea called for a stop to the joint military exercises, as one of the conditions for the 2 Koreas to engage in dialogue. Seoul and Washington say their drills are defensive in nature, but North Korea is not convinced. Pyongyang characterizes the drills as a rehearsal for a northward invasion. And instead of responding to South Korea's calls on numerous occasions to come to the negotiating table, North Korea continues with its nuclear threats. The regime's state-run newspaper Rodong Sinmun said on Tuesday that Pyongyang is pursuing nuclear and economic development at the same time. It went on to say the regime will follow its military-first policy to the very end, while continuing to develop its nuclear capabilities. With Seoul and Washington not budging from the joint military drills, and vowing to go ahead with the large-scale joint training set for March, eyes turn to how that's going to affect the prospects of inter-Korean dialogue. As for the latest, South Korean President Park Geun-hye reached out to North Korea once again on Monday in her New Year's press conference, offering talks with no preconditions. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
In 2014, aside from some high-profile IPOs here and there, Korea's stock market remained relatively gloomy, but many market watchers think it will be a different story this year. Our Sung Ji-sun has this year's stock market outlook.
2014 was a lackluster year for the Korean stock market. The benchmark Kospi index closed the year at 1915, 100 points lower than it started, a year after being trapped in the 200-point range and below the 2,100-point barrier. This year, with the country's economic recovery picking up pace, market analysts expect the Kospi to break out of this pattern and top 2,200, most probably in third or fourth quarter. Among the main factors setting the tone for the market were the Fed's decision to raise its key interest rate and the performance of Samsung Electronics, which accounts for 14% of the overall market capitalization. Many analysts believe the Fed's rate hike will have a limited impact on the bourse, but the big question about Samsung is whether it can shore up its poor smartphone performance from the third quarter of last year.
We're expecting a low of 1870 and a high of 2260. There could be some adjustments in the first half following rate changes in the U.S., but the stock market will rise at a moderate rate in the second half.
One main theme for the market this year will be dividend payments. Last year, big-name IPOs took center stage, partly due to the listing of Tail Industries, the de facto holding company of the Samsung Group, and its affiliate Samsung SDS. But the number of companies seeking IPOs will drop by half to around 30 this year. Among them are low-cost airlines Jeju Air and Air Busan, and Hyundai Group's advertising arm, Inocean. The focus this year will be on how shareholders benefit from a government policy on increasing dividend payments. Policymakers have voiced concerns that too many companies are stocking away too much money for reserves and that Korea's dividend payout ratio is lower than that of emerging or developed markets.
We will seek to increase the influence of shareholders in deciding dividend plans to make them more reasonable and help institutional investors to become more involved in the process.
Now, another point to look out for in 2015 is whether the Korean market can be included in the developed market category on the MSCI index, which is an important factor when global fund managers draw up their investment portfolios. Korea has been regarded as an emerging market, largely because of its currency's limited convertibility and limits on foreign investors' ability to trade in securities. The question of whether Seoul has made progress on improving investment conditions will be decided in June. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Microsoft has enjoyed a virtual monopoly in supplying a critical security feature for online shopping in Korea for more than 2 decades, but that's about to end. Financial regulators say that starting as early as March, shoppers trying to buy things off Korean websites will no longer have to deal with the little box asking them to install a Microsoft security program. Connie Kim explains.
Many would say it's been a long time coming, but online shoppers in Korea will soon be able to get things much more easily. For starters, the government will no longer require shoppers to install a Microsoft-developed authentication program just to buy something online, under a plan to be introduced as early as March. The ActiveX plugin, which only works on Internet Explorer, has been a must-have for shoppers, making a purchase of over 300,000 won, roughly $275. The system was first implemented in 1999 to ensure safe online payments, but was often criticized for being slow and having poor web compatibility, limiting access to online shopping. Under proposed changes, it'll make online transaction procedures much simpler and let shoppers using other internet browsers, such as Firefox, Chrome, or Safari. The clunky online shopping requirement in Korea was even pointed out by President Park Geun-hye herself during her New Year's press conference on Monday.
액티브X와 같은 이런 낡은 규제에 안주한 결과 국내 소비자의 해외 직구는 폭발적으로 느는데 해외 소비자의 국내 역직구는 걸음마 수준입니다.
With ActiveX on the way out and shoppers having an easier time buying things from Korea-based websites, Korean online retailers hope the country will start turning its e-commerce deficit around. Foreign online purchases of Korean goods are expected at $27.7 million, or 1.5% of Koreans' online purchases of foreign goods last year. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Koreans are willing to pay top dollar for some of their favorite indulgences, even if they are double or even triple the price that they are in other countries. What are these goods in question and why are they so expensive here in Korea? Our Kwon-soo explains.
What do coffee, wine, and cheese in Korea have in common? They are all popular imports, and they are expensive. In fact, a recent survey of 13 major countries revealed that these three products are pulling the largest amount of money out of Korean consumers' pockets. According to Consumers Korea, a Starbucks Americano costs more than 4,000 won in Korea, or roughly $3.80. You'll get the same coffee indulgence for around $2.30 at a Starbucks in the United States. But it's not all that shocking, considering that most Korean brands sell their coffee for similar prices, as coffee consumption has skyrocketed in recent years. The industry is now estimated to be worth around $5.7 billion. Another product stands out too. A bottle of Montes Alpha premium wine from Chile sells for around $39 on Korean shelves, nearly double the price in Australia. And what goes well with the beverage? Cheese. But this too comes at a high price for Koreans. The Laughing Cow, a famous processed cheese product from France, can be bought in Korea for over $4, which is very expensive compared to what the French have to pay, a mere $1.30. The list goes on. 8 out of 42 imported products were found to be the most expensive in Korea, and 11 products were ranked second most expensive. This, despite Korea's efforts to conclude numerous free trade agreements in recent years. Consumers Korea points to the country's distribution system as the reason for the high prices and says that for the general public to benefit from FTAs, the system will need a revision. Kwon-soo, Arirang News.
Signs of an economic turnaround in the United States are raising the stakes for this year's North American International Auto Show in Detroit. And shining debuts are in store for dozens of new models in what promises to be a great event in America's Motor City. Kim Ji-yoon shows us what's behind this optimism.
The economic recovery in the United States and tumbling oil prices are having a profound impact on the latest trends at this year's North American International Auto Show in Detroit. Convertibles are making a comeback, mainly due to stronger consumer spending as Americans enjoy the fruits of the strengthening economy.
Well, we got a lot of exciting products. So, we've got 3 new 6 Series behind us. The US market is the largest one for these cars. The convertible, around 60-odd% of all of those that we sell are in the United States. So I think that will be a very strong product during the year.
Another popular item that has a firm place in the hearts of North American drivers is a pickup truck.
As soon as the oil prices drop, they automatically go back to what they're comfortable with. So I think as long as prices stay low, the potential for SUVs and trucks is probably better than we've seen in several years.
Despite the falling oil prices, automakers are being pressured to develop more fuel-efficient models as more stringent environment rules are being put in place around the world. That's why electric and hybrid models are also popular this year. General Motors will debut a new version of its plug-in hybrid Chevrolet Volt, the model's first update in 5 years. Korea's Hyundai Motor will also reveal a new hybrid version of its Sonata sedan. The North American International Auto Show opens to the public on Saturday and runs through January 25th at Detroit's Kobu Center. Kim Ji-yoon, Arirang News.
Social media accounts for the U.S. military command were briefly shut down following a cyber attack by a group claiming to support the Islamic State.
With more, we turn to Paul Yee at the News Center. Paul, the Pentagon has denied that its military operational networks were hacked or that any classified data was leaked. How is the American government responding?
Well, the FBI has launched an investigation into the case that's being described as an embarrassing propaganda breach. This as U.S. officials have been downplaying the incident as a mere act of cyber vandalism. Nonetheless, these self-declared pro-IS hackers have exploited a security flaw, one that's been used to threaten American military personnel. Our Hwang Seung-hee reports.
The U.S. Central Command's Twitter and YouTube accounts were hacked by a group claiming to be supporters of Islamic State militants. The command acknowledged that its social media accounts had been compromised and called it an act of cyber vandalism, although it added there had been no operational impact. Pro-Islamic State messages were plastered over the command's Twitter page. A profile picture showed a figure in a black and white headscarf with the text, "I love you, ISIS." One post read, "American soldiers, we're coming, watch your back." Other posts included the names and contact information of members of the U.S. military, as well as PowerPoint slides and maps. Its YouTube page was also hacked, with 2 video uploads appearing to be linked to the Islamic State. The command focuses on countries in the Middle East, and this hack comes as the U.S. and its coalition partners have been launching airstrikes on Islamic State forces in Iraq and Syria. The FBI is investigating the case, and the White House is also looking into the matter.
I can tell you this is something that we're obviously looking into and something that we take seriously.
And coincidence it may be, but the hack happened as President Barack Obama was announcing new proposals aimed at bolstering cybersecurity. Hwang Seung-hee, Arirang News.
And turning to Paris, the French satirical weekly that came under attack by Islamist gunmen last week says it will print up to 3 million copies of its next issue, set to hit newsstands on Wednesday. The new front page of Charlie Hebdo was revealed on Twitter, featuring a caricature of the Prophet Muhammad below a headline saying, "All is forgiven." In an interview, the surviving editorial staff vowed it would never give in, following the deadly shooting at its Paris office. Meanwhile, hundreds of people gathered in Jerusalem on Tuesday to mourn the 4 victims who were killed in a separate terror attack at a Paris supermarket. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, French Environment Minister Ségolène Royal, and other leaders attended the funeral service. And finally, the latest development in the Air Asia disaster. Indonesia confirms that both black box recorders from the passenger jet that crashed in the Java Sea have been recovered. The country's transport ministry announced on Tuesday the successful retrieval of the second box, which appears to be intact. The cockpit voice recorder is expected to be sent to the capital, Jakarta, where forensic experts will begin downloading, then analyzing the data over the coming weeks. This as international teams have vowed to refocus their search efforts on the missing victims. And that wraps up our look at international stories for now. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Hello and welcome. I'm Stephen Che with Tuesday's Sports Rundown. Kicking off with the Asian Cup. Opening the second round of the group stage, South Korea took the pitch against Kuwait in Canberra. Let's jump to the highlights. The Taeguk Warriors made some key changes with Lee Chung-young out indefinitely and Son Heung-min and Koo Ja-chul sitting out with the flu. Without them, it was a scrappy battle for chances. But we go to the 36th minute, a perfect cross by Chaduri met Nam Tae-hee's head for a goal. And that single moment of brilliance sealed it, sending Korea to the knockout stage with 1 left to play. And joining them are host Australia, who notched their second win in a 4-0 drubbing of Oman. The Aussies are on fire, with each of their 8 goals so far coming from different players. In other football news, Cristiano Ronaldo took home football's most prestigious award, the Ballon d'Or, for the 2nd year running. With it, he's fast cementing his legacy as one of the best in history. Let's take a closer look.
The ceremony started off with 3 footballers looking to win the biggest individual honor in the sport, with Real Madrid's Cristiano Ronaldo, Barcelona's Lionel Messi, and Bayern Munich's Manuel Neuer taking center stage. And with Thierry Henry announcing the winner of the 2014 Ballon d'Or,
the winner is Cristiano Ronaldo,
who took the top prize, claiming his 2nd straight and his 3rd overall. Receiving almost 38% of the votes, the 30-year-old beat out his longtime rival Lionel Messi, who received around 16% of the vote, barely beating out German goalkeeper Manuel Neuer, who finished a very close 3rd. And while Messi won 3 straight from 2010 to 2012, it's now Ronaldo's turn to win back-to-back Ballon d'Ors. Scoring 33 goals in just 28 matches, including 26 goals in 16 league matches so far during the 2014-2015 season, Ronaldo's next goal is to win this year's La Liga championship and the Champions League with Real Madrid. SJ Lee, Arirang News.
And leaving that there, let's go to the KBL. The first of the doubleheader takes us to the tip-off in Ulsan. The Samsung Thunders hosted the Mobis Phoebus, and the Phoebus turned a 10-point lead at halftime to a dominating 25-point victory. Ricardo Ratliff and Yang Dong-gun lead Mobis to their first win of 2015. And we go over to Jeonju. The KCC Aegis dropped to the KT Sonic Boom by 13 points after KT pulls too far away in the 3rd quarter. It's an excellent win for KT as all but one baller get on the score sheet. And over to pro volleyball in the V-League. First to the ladies who took the court in Incheon. The Hunguk Life Pink Spiders went up against the Korea Expressway Zenith. And the #1 Zenith tangled up the Spiders with Nicole Fawcett putting it down. Korea Expressway are on a roll now, blanking their opponents for the 5th game in a row. Meanwhile, to the men, the Korean Air Jumbos and OK Savings Bank Russian Cash also clashed in Incheon, and the Russian Cash ground the Jumbos to keep them at bay on the standings. Now to golf. American Patrick Reed took home the title and over $1.1 million in prize money at the Hyundai Tournament of Champions. The 24-year-old was steady through 4 rounds, finishing with an overall score of 21 under par to force a playoff against Jimmy Walker. There, he sank the 18-foot birdie putt on the first hole to go home the winner. As for the Koreans, Bae Sang-moon finished 6th and No Seung-yeol tied for 11th. And that's all I have for now. Your weather's up next. See you later.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with the weather forecast. We got to enjoy a mild winter day under partly cloudy skies, and moderate clouds, that is, will continue through tomorrow, especially down south, leading to showers, and about 5 to 20 millimeters of precipitation is expected for Jeju. Other than that, a dry weather watch continues to be in effect along the eastern coast of Gangwon-do province. Looking ahead, it looks like moderate conditions will continue throughout the week, but there is a chance of rainfall on Friday. Moving on to Wednesday's readings, Seoul starts off the day at -2 before jumping up to 6 in the afternoon. Gwangju hits 8, Busan reaches 10. On to other regions, Daejeon reaches 6, rainy Jeju peaks at 11, Dokdo 8, Mount Kumgang dips to 1. That's all the updates I have for you now. I'll be back with more updates after midnight, and here's a look at the international weather.
And that's primetime news for this Tuesday. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Sean Lim.
And I'm Kang Tae-ri. Have a great evening. We'll see you again soon.